We talked playoffs here a little bit. Let's take a look now at some offseason discussion, and we will start here with a New York Knicks hot board here. What coach could the Knicks hire this offseason? We'll, of course, start at number 5 and work our way down from 5 to number 1. At number 5, a very popular name in the NBA coaching search right now, David Fizdale.
A very popular coach because LeBron James has just
loves
infatuated by David Fizdale. I am as well. I think that he's one of the most misunderstood coaches in the entire NBA. His weird falling out with Marc Gasol. I honestly blame on Marc Gasol more than I do David Fizdale, because Fizdale was trying to modernize the offense, shoot more threes, higher usage rate for stars. And Marc Gasol was like, why are you putting me at the three-point line? And Fizdale was just like, that's just how the NBA is nowadays. They clashed a lot, and management decided to side with Marc Gasol, which
they always sided with the star.
Fair enough, but I thought it was ridiculous how they got rid of him. I think Fizdale is one of the best coaches in all of basketball. I just don't know if he's going to want to go to the Knicks. I think a team like the Bucks would be perfect for David Fizdale, or maybe, if you want to maybe the Cavs, if they're able to keep LeBron, and then dark horse for David Fizdale, the Phoenix Suns, I think would also be a really fun team for him.
That would be a fun
I would
fit.
love to see Fizdale take on Devin Booker and Josh Jackson and try to expand their skill sets a little bit. But Fizdale with the Knicks, I'm not too crazy about.
So Fizdale checks in at number 5, not because of the coaching quality, but because we think he might find a better fit instead. Get to number 4 then on our Knicks coaching hot board. Here's a familiar name, Mike Woodson, which I think would be peak Knicks.
It would be so peak Knicks, and that's why I have him on here as number 4. And it's more than that, Tom. He said that he wants to finish what he started. And I hope he means by taking the 2012 Knicks team that he had that won 54 games and should have won in the playoffs, but Melo decided to be terrible throughout most of the playoffs, and the team completely fell apart because it's the Knicks, and that's what they do. I can't believe that Mike Woodson might actually go back to the Knicks. I'm
actually very surprised even in the mix, because it didn't work the first time. It wasn't a disaster.
But he wants to finish what he started.
But this isn't like a Phil Jackson scenario where you just bring him back because, he retired and then he retired. Like, why would you why?
Because he wants to finish what he started.
Yeah, I know Woodson wants it, but why would the Knicks want this?
Because it's all about just their Knicks owner being terrible, the fact that the front office is also terrible, and they have no idea what good coaching looks like. If the Knicks were smart, they wouldn't even be talking to Mike Woodson. But they're not, because this is the New York Knicks we're talking about here. So they're going to make this as big of a calamity as they possibly can.
Well, Mike Woodson checks in at number 4. Let's keep it rolling then to number 3, Harris. One of the ones that you're a big fan of here. I'm not quite as convinced as you are. Jerry Stackhouse. Yes, that Jerry Stackhouse.
Yes, like the player Jerry Stackhouse, like the great NBA player. Look, he was great as the Raptors G League coach this year. They made it all the way to the G League finals, and then they lost to the Spurs G League team because,
classic.
Duh. I love Jerry Stackhouse as a coach. I think he does a great job. His offensive schemes are very modern. He plays a versatile defensive scheme that allows for a lot of switching off the ball. I think he runs a very well-oiled machine for a G League team. But jumping from the Raptors G League team to the New York Knicks is a huge jump. I would love to see him maybe start with the Orlando Magic, maybe start with the Suns, or even go to the Hawks and just kind of build his NBA coaching sphere, similar to what Mark Jackson did when he was the head coach of the Hawks for a couple of years in there as well. I think Stackhouse is going to be a good head coach, but I just think that the Knicks is a big jump for him right off the bat.
Here's just the general concern for me with Stackhouse. And having the G League experience, I think, is a big deal for him, because it is some level of head coaching, even though it's not quite the NBA. It is the G League. It's kind of the next closest thing outside of, I guess, being an elite college head coach. But the recent track record of players to head coaches hasn't really been all that good. Now, there are definitely exceptions in there, but
are there?
What's the difference between Stackhouse and Jason Kidd?
Well, I think a lot of it has to do with ego. I mean, Jason Kidd's biggest problem with coaching has always been ego. Derek Fisher's biggest problem as a coach was the fact that he didn't know how to run an offense, despite being one of the smartest on-court point guards that the NBA had ever seen. Stackhouse's difference is that he's just a smarter and more calm coach in terms of how he handles younger players and how his offensive scheme works. You don't see him on the sidelines a lot, stomping around and yelling at people. He's a very calm, cool-headed coach that kind of takes his schemes that he played as a player and applies it to what he's doing. I like Stackhouse as a coach. I think he's going to be a really nice one. But like I said before, going from the Raptors G League team that you brought to the finals, in his first year as a coach, mind you, to the New York Knicks with Kristaps Porzingis coming off an ACL, a second-year Frankie Smokes, plus another draft pick that you're going to get inside of the top 10. I think it's a little much for Stackhouse off the bat. I want to see him go to a young team and maybe bring them into an 8th seed in the playoffs before you jump into that big of a market.
That's fair. I think maybe you're hoping you can get a Steve Kerr.
Yeah, exactly.
Who had some other non-playing experience before he made the league.
The last thing you want to do is have him be Mark Jackson. Bring him onto a good team, have him coach that good team to them being good enough, but then it just being his fault that they can't get over the hump. And I think that might be Stackhouse's problem with the Knicks if he ends up making the jump now.
All right, Stackhouse checks in at number 3. Let's take it then to number 2 on our list here. And
LOL.
Here's a name NBA fans are familiar with, David Blatt, the former Cavs head coach.
I would not have put David Blatt even on this list, but the New York Knicks are apparently infatuated with Blatt, have brought him in for 2 interviews, and he is now one of their top 2 options to be their head coach, which I cannot believe because, look, some coaches just aren't meant for the NBA. Some coaches just aren't meant for the star power. They aren't meant for that kind of, just that kind of transition. Some coaches are better in Europe, or some of them are better
in college,
in Eurobasket. David Blatt is that guy. He dominated the Turkish Super League this year. He dominated the Israeli Basketball League when he was with Tel Aviv. He's dominated Eurobasket multiple times. He's a great Basketball World Cup coach as well, but it's just not his style to deal with these star players. And now you're going to take him, put him in New York. I saw an article yesterday that said, is David Blatt better equipped to handle Kristaps Porzingis because he coached in Europe? No, Kristaps Porzingis is no longer a European basketball player. Kristaps Porzingis is now coming off of a pretty devastating knee injury, needs a coach that truly believes in him and can let him kind of be himself in order for him to make a full return. I'm not a huge David Blatt fan. I think it's going to be a fiasco if he's brought to New York.
All right, so Blatt is number 2 then. Let's get to your number 1 option for the New York Knicks, Harris. And at number 1 is the recently parted ways head coach, Mike Budenholzer.
Give him the job. I think this is the perfect job for him in terms of just that next step as a head coach. Look, he peaked as the Hawks head coach. That Paul Millsap, Al Horford, Dennis Schroeder, Jeff Teague team that he had that got to a number 1 seed and then had a couple playoff appearances back-to-back, that was his peak as a coach. And those Hawks teams were never going to get past LeBron James. Now you give him to the Knicks, right? And now you give him Kristaps Porzingis and you give him Frankie Smokes and you let him build these players into a system, which is what he learned from Pop how to do. I think Budenholzer would be a fantastic fit for the New York Knicks, and apparently he wants this job badly. The reason that Budenholzer left the Hawks is because he's tired of losing. He doesn't want to be a part of a team that is intentionally going to lose over the next couple of years. The New York Knicks have made it very clear that they want to win starting next season. They're going to draft a good player this offseason, and they are going to sign a couple free agents as well to match with Kristaps and Frankie Smokes. And I'm talking maybe a Paul George level player, or maybe they make a run at Chris Paul. We'll get to some of our free agent options later, but the Knicks are going to make a run at some of these guys in an effort to take that next step as a franchise. And if they can bring in Budenholzer, that all of a sudden adds an elite level coach that players are going to want to come to New York for. But a David Blatt or a Jerry Stackhouse or a Mike Woodson, like, these guys are not free agent guys. These are not guys that free agents are going to want to come play for. Budenholzer, a Pop recruit, is the perfect option for the Knicks.
You mentioned Pop. That's all I need to hear.
There you go.
All right, to recap, folks, if you missed it, here are the top 5 coaching options for the New York Knicks. Number 5 is David Fizdale. Mike Woodson is number 4. Jerry Stackhouse is number 3. David Blatt, a coach you're not a fan of, Harris, is number 2. And then Mike Budenholzer checks in at number 1.
Stay in Turkey.
Prediction for you, Harris.
Budenholzer. Budenholzer 100%. Apparently, he wants the job badly. Look, if you can find a coach who wants to coach the New York Knicks, hire him instantly. Because there are very few guys out there who want to coach the New York Knicks. I think Budenholzer is the perfect combination of what they need. And again, keeping him in the Eastern Conference is good as well because he's familiar with the teams that he has to go up against and familiar with the coaches that he's going to see on the opposing sideline. I think Budenholzer is the perfect pick.
All right, those are your top 5 options for the New York Knicks head coaching job.